Hello everyone and welcome back to another video about math and physics in Unity. And this video is created for Kitacode. Okay, so let's get started. Well, what are we talking about today? Well, we're talking about angles, specifically measured in degrees and radians, which are the two measurement units that we can use to measure degrees or just angles. So yeah, let's get started. Well, as you guys can see over here, I've made a small test project inside Unity. I'll talk about the code later on as well, but for now don't worry about it. And degrees, normally when you say if you want to measure an angle, you'll be like, oh, you can measure it in degrees, right? Well, actually, there's another way to measure it as well, which is called a radian, and I'll talk about that later on. But let's run this project. And okay, so once we run this project, on the inspector, we would go to, where is it? Angle. Okay, so we've run the project and we have an angle. So let's input an angle. Let's say 45. As you guys can see, these red lines are the markers of every 45. Alright, so 45, 90, 135, 180, 225, 270, 315, and 360. Alright, so let's go to 45 for example. As you guys can see, it can change. So we can even just move this around, just turn it around. See, as you can see, it turns based on that angle. Cool, right? Okay, well, that's actually that. That's pretty simple for that. Well, what is a radian, actually? Well, radians are different in measurements. It's not in 1 degree is 1 radian. It's not a direct comparison. Well, actually, 1 radian is equal to 57.2958 degrees. I'll talk about that right now, actually. So let me open this page. As you guys can see, we have a circle. Don't worry about these different color ones. I'll explain as we go on. Okay. So how do we find a radian? How do we know that a radian, the calculated in degrees, is 57.2958 degrees? Well, it's actually pretty simple. As you guys can see, this is the radius, right? And the radius is the length from the middle point of the circle, all the way to the edge of it. Any point is the same radius. So let's say we take that radius and we put it in a tangent to the circle. And then we bend it in a way where it covers the side of the circle as much as it can, actually. So as you guys can see, this is R and this is also R. So basically just the same length, but it's just curved now. And the good thing is they're all the same length, because this is another point, this is another point, and this is just a curve. Well, where do we get radian from? Well, actually, if you do that and put R there, this angle will actually become 57.2958. Isn't that cool? Alright, okay, so this was in degrees, right? Well, we can actually find out how many of these arcs, as you guys can see over here, these arcs we need to specifically do this. I've written it over here. Let me go open my Unity back. Okay, circles, the circle circumference, basically the whole around the circle, is 2 pi r, right? Well, how many number of arcs do we need to complete this whole circle? Well, we approximately need 2 pi, which is about 6.28. So we can prove that by trying it out. So let's say 1 radian is 57.2958, right? So let's input that. As you guys can see, it's right over this blue line, which I put 57.2958. So yeah, that's 1 radian. Well, how many do we need to complete this? So let's multiply it by 2. As you guys see, that's 2 radians, 3 radians, 4 radians, 5 radians, 6 radians. And as you guys can see, remember I told you guys 6.28 approximately? Well, that is actually pretty true. But since we multiply it by 6, it doesn't really work, right? So we need to do 0.8. And that 0.28, sorry, is 28% of 1 radian. So see, as you guys can see, it's not completely 360 degrees because it's a rough number. It's not actually, because it's pi and it's pretty infinite. So yeah, that's that. Now let me show you guys the code. If you guys are wondering how to build this on yourself, well, I actually just attached, let's go to the scene. I'll show you guys. As you guys can see over here, this is the scene I have. This green one is basically a cube, because we need that, and inside of another cube. And why did I put inside of another cube called angle? Well, actually, it's actually a game object, sorry, a game object, because normally when you have game objects, their pivot is right in the center. But we want to turn it from this point, so we put a game object here, an empty game object. Take it out and show you guys. As you guys see, it's positioned right at the center. So if I put this back, now the cube, this green thing, will start rotating from here instead of rotating from its axis over here. Okay, so that's basically the basic explanation. So let me show you guys the code. Well, actually, the code is pretty simple. It just takes in the game object, which is our angle game object, which is the rotating green thing. Then the float of an angle. Well, why float? Because in this case, for example, as you saw, 1 radian is 57.2958, right? So that's a float basically. So that's why we need floats. Well, not technically, but we could have it. So, and then we just check always update. Update is basically every few seconds it checks, like, is this statement still true, and if you put if statements. But for now, we just want to change the angle. So I did angle object, which is the green thing, transform.rotation, which is rotating in, and this is just something Unity has, quaternion dot Euler. And then we did a new vector 3 because it has 3 vectors because it's in a 3D space. We don't want to change the x, the y rotation, but we want to change the z into the angle that we input. So yeah, that's pretty simple if you guys want to try it yourself. And yeah, this is for this. But I actually made another scene which inputs in radians. So let's try that out. Okay, so as you guys can see, it's basically the same, but this time it inputs in radians. Let me show you guys the code. Well, actually, it's pretty easy. As you guys can see over here, it still basically takes it as a radian, so we basically need 6.2 is our maximum, right? 6.28 is our maximum. And we want to convert that into degrees, so our game object here can read it, because normally in Unity it reads degrees, but there are other functions for finding what's it called? Yes, radians. So basically there's a function for radians, but this one is basically giving you guys a formula as well. Okay, so it's basically the same, but this time we named it radian, and then the formula. Okay, so 1 radian, let's say we input 1, multiplied by 180 over math.pi. So that's basically the formula you need to convert radians into degrees. So multiply by 180 over pi. I'll talk about that later on as well. But for now, let's test it out. Okay, as you guys can see, I selected the game object, and now we have this. So if I put 1, now we turn automatically to 57.2958, because that's 1 radian, right? So if I do 0.5, it go half a radian. So then we do 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Again, see, we need 6.28 radians, right? Cool. And that approximates to about 2 pi. Okay, so let me show you what I mean by 2 pi. Well, that one's done. Well, now we have a slightly more complex circle. Well, we actually have fractions for each section of the circle where it's the 45. So let's start from here. Well, this is actually 0, starts from 0, and it goes 1/4 of pi, 2/4 of pi, which is 1/2, 3/4, 1 pi, so that's half of 2 pi is 1 pi, so we have 2 pi over here, 5/4, 6/4, 7/4, and of course 2 pi, which is 8/4. So this is basically the radian circle, and the reason is 2 pi because, as I told you guys over here, the number of arcs needed is 2 pi, so to complete one whole circle. So imagine 2 pi over here, 1/4 of pi, and like 3/4 of pi about. So yeah, cool, right? Well, now let me show you guys the formulas that you need. I showed you guys one of them, but let me show you guys the other one. Okay, so the formulas are actually pretty simple. They're pretty similar to each other, as I showed you guys before. So let's say we have the radian, right? We have the radian, which is our input, whatever our radian is. Let's say 1 radian, okay? And this is for converting radians into degrees, right? Okay, so we need to take the radian, and then we need to multiply it by 180, and then we divide that by pi. Okay, so that's converting into degrees. Pretty simple. And converting back is also pretty simple. It just needs to change one thing, the degrees. Okay, so now changing into degrees. So let's say we input degrees. Okay, then what we have to do now is multiply it by pi this time, and then we do over 180. This becomes basically the radian. So if you do 1 degree, it approximately 1 degree is approximately like 0.017 radians. So we don't need to worry about that. But for the formulas over here, as you guys can see, so this is converting the radians into degrees so Unity can understand it. So it's radian times 180 over math.pi, as I showed you guys over here. See, radians times 180 over pi. As you guys can see, it turns it into degrees so Unity can understand it, so it can turn the game object. Thank you guys for watching this video. If you enjoyed, feel free to subscribe. It helps a lot. And turn on post notifications so you can get notified every time I upload videos like these. And also, thank you to KiddaCode for sponsoring this video. Thank you for watching, and bye bye.